All four of my grandparents were born apparently within 50 miles of each other. So that's,
In eastern Slovakia, is that correct?
Father was the oldest of his family, and my mother was the oldest of her family. My grandfather in Pranack had a candy store. I mean, my father never hugged me, and I irritated the heck out of him. And one day I irritated him so bad that he is going after me. I'm going around and he's trying to catch me, and he's hit me, and I dodged. And he hits the floor with his hand, and needless to say, it hurt. He is so angry, he's frothing. No hugs, just nastiness. That's my father. His words were, "You have everything, I have nothing." And that in his ethnic group, we were rich. We had a car, and it's considered the most beautiful girl in that valley. No question about that. She just was a frightened person. And they lived above it, and I was born on the third floor of that place, But the candy store was narrow, long, the building, and the back was the kitchen and a kind of a living room. I didn't have good upbringing. My mother cried a lot. "Look at her, look at me, look at my ear. We gotta do something, I need an operation." And my mom would cry. She'd go to my dad would scream at me that you're spoiled, you're just spoiled. My father just hated medical doctors. When my brother got sick, we didn't take my brother to a medical doctor, and he died. He was born in January and died in October. When I saw that my mother took her life, I pledged that I would never be as mean and ugly as my father was. My father had never physically beat my mother, but that would have been mild compared to how he beat her psychologically. He was ahead of himself, as you've again and again said about health things, but he was a nut. Every Christmas, I got the biggest erector set, the biggest train, and so forth. He'd play with it. That was his toy, sure. And my mother and her sisters gave me all kind of love. I'm the first son of two families. I'm raised like royalty. I never got a spanking. My father only went through 2 years of formal education, being a designer of steel equipment. There's no question that he was a genius.
And he didn't really have an big education at all. He was self-educated, and he took engineering courses and became a draftsman and was very, very talented.
He got so good that when the Depression was on, he was still working and no one else was. There was only two people. This was Mess the Machine. Father had that energy. I told you, when he was working at the steel mill, he had so much energy. After work, he would go to these Jewish butchers, their orders for signs, paint them at night. On his way to work, he would deliver them. I was getting paid to cut those letters for him. The bitter part of the story is that I was wanting to buy a car. I'm down in the basement, slaving away, cutting these letters. I'm adding up, and I said, I got enough for the car. So he took me to the McFadden. That's it. That was no gift. That was pay. My father just would not let me get my driver's license. And he had a Studebaker with an overdrive in it. My mom just hated to drive. She just was a nervous wreck. And needless to say, my grandmother, McClasko, wouldn't even think of driving. So all was left for me. I was 17, and my father's mother, and my mother, and my father, the four of us went to California. And a lot of my father's family were going out. And we're going over the desert. The car is floating like this. When the car does that, that means you're going like hell. I was going over 100 miles an hour, and I thought my dad was going to have a heart attack. 2-3 hours by, I learned how to drive. I was going 100 miles an hour.